What's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning into my channel. My name is Simon Hill, Black American from Louisiana, coming to you live from Budapest, Hungary, and I'm here with my beautiful wife. Say hi, boo.
Hi, everyone. This is Akdi, and I'm from Turkey, and today we are reviewing Anora.
Yes, this is a 2024 comedy, dramedy film directed and written by Sean Baker. He also edited the film as well. It stars Mikey Madison as Anora, this young sex worker who also happens to know a little bit of Russian, speak a little bit of Russian, and ends up marrying this young Russian son of an oligarch. And it's a fun story, I would say. And this film is interesting because it's in contention to win the best film at the Oscars, and it also won the prestigious Palme d'Or in France. And my wife and I watched it last night, and I could say that I enjoyed it, but it is definitely in contention for like most overrated film this year, where I feel like so many other mainstream films, forget all the films that I like there have been so many other films this year that I know for a fact are better than this, right? I didn't even see Zone of Interest, and I feel it's better than this. I saw La Cometa, and that was better than this. I saw Anatomy of a Fall, which is possibly inching it out better as far as like feminist themes and like just overall story, and other films we saw as well. Of course, my favorites like Book of Clarence, American Fiction, but overall, it is a good movie. But the fact that it won the Palme d'Or and it might win Best at the Oscars, I think says a lot about, you know, film criticism right now and what people are gravitating towards. But what did you think about it?
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with it being overrated. Like, I enjoyed watching it, but it's more like a easy to follow story that asks some questions without really like pushing your mind to a ridiculous level, you know? So I don't know, maybe that's why people like this movie a lot, because it's still like makes you feel like you have to question certain things, but not that deep.
Yeah. And I feel like, you know, me in my own personal life, I've seen, you know, movies about sex workers that I feel like were done much better. At least like comedy dramedies, like Zola is one of my favorite films of all time, A24 film. Players Club, which is a black classic New Line Cinema film. Like, that is a hands down, in my opinion, better film about strippers, that lifestyle and stuff like that. And other films I'm sure as well that I can't think of right now about sex workers, right? Maybe you could throw The Handmaiden in there, that Korean film we saw a few months ago. But yeah, as a film about sex workers, I feel like there's a lack of depth for the character Anora that shows like maybe this is very surface level for Sean Baker as how he thinks about sex workers. But what do you think?
Yeah, I feel like it's somewhat like romanticized, not in like an overly done way, but we don't really see that struggle with being a sex worker and having to deal with men, except for maybe just the beginning of the movie we see it, and then after that we sort of just go into this fairy tale that Anora, Annie, the main character, is trying to pursue.
Right.
So yeah, like, you know, that's, you know, that class of sex workers and their struggles are not that much explored.
Yeah, so speaking of, like you said, the beginning of the movie opens up with, you know, images of the strip club, and we see guys getting lap dances, girls walking around trying to solicit the guys to go for private dances, them getting tips in their bras and their G-strings and stuff like that. And in between, we hear what some of the other strippers are like talking about. Like Annie is in the back room with the girls and talking about, this guy said I looked like his 18-year-old daughter and I was so hot, and then he gave me like $100 tip or something like that. And then like she's outside talking more and gossiping with her girlfriends about the gross stuff dudes say to her. And we also see that Annie sort of has like a conflicting relationship with the strip club. Like, they're always on her ass about being late or, you know, coming to work on certain days, stuff like that, right? Like, what did you think of the opening?
Yeah, first of all, I have to say, like, one of the worst opening songs ever.
Yeah, like the music in this thing is really bad. Like, the song is like some David Guetta-ish. Like,
yeah, it was just really bad. And I think you also said even like, what type of strip club music is this?
Yeah.
Because like, yeah, how can you even dance to that?
Can I be frank? Like, just to keep it real, everything in America is sort of divided by like race and like class to some degree. And in America, we have white strip clubs and black strip clubs. I'm going to keep it absolutely a buck.
So was this a white strip
This
club?
is the whitest of white strip clubs, right? And the thing about white strip clubs, of course, you'll still have the ethnic girls there. You'll have black girls, Hispanic girls, Asian girls, stuff like that. But they more fit into the white aesthetic. You know what I mean? Like, their booties aren't too big. More tits than actual ass. You know, face over everything, right? But the black strip club, it's BBLs everywhere, you know, big booties and titties, like girls climbing up on the poles doing aerobics. Like, black girls have to work twice as hard, 3 times as hard to make the money like the white girls make and stuff like that. And of course the music is different, right? Like you're gonna hear like straight up hip hop and R&B in the black strip clubs, and you'll hear David Guetta in the white strip club.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously all sex work done by everyone is hard because you have to deal with like men, and sometimes they could be perverts, and you're basically at the end of the day somewhat like selling your body, right? Mm-hmm. So but compared to like other series or black movies that I've seen where they had strippers, yeah, I can say this one had like less of a work than like compared to
like you just walk up to the guy, you like toss your hair to the side and say, "Hey daddy, you want to dance?" Like, yeah, like you're so smart and like you're so like professional. Like, you know, you remind me of my uncle. He was like, anyway, I'm talking too much. You want to dance?
Yeah.
But yeah,
yeah, my first expression of Annie was that like, okay, she's like the city girl. She obviously looks very young, and she's trying to make something like out of this world in her life. And yeah, she's just like living the struggle. Yeah. You know, that's what I thought of her. But at the same time, like being young, you don't forget to have fun and gossip with your friends. Yeah. And that sort of thing. So that was like my first impression.
Yeah. So the movie moves kind of fast in telling its story, right? So like, you know, we do find out that Annie, you know, lives like with her sister or some other girl, maybe a cousin, I don't know. But, you know, she's like sharing this apartment, and like when she's not at the strip club, her life is not as glorious. Her house is like right next to this train track, right? And so, but that's as much background as we get on Annie, right, in the story. But until one day, you know, Annie is at the strip club and her boss comes in and says, "We have a big roller, high tipper, whale in here, and he's asking for a girl that speaks Russian." And Annie, I guess, speaks Russian or knows Russian. So she goes and meets the guy, and this guy, his name is Ivan, but he says, "Call me Vanya." And Vanya is like this very young, skinny looking, you know, white guy, and he's like talking to Annie, and Annie understands Russian because her grandmother never learned English when she came to America, but she's kind of embarrassed by her Russian the same way Vanya is embarrassed by his English. What did you think of like that background on Annie and also that first interaction with Ivan?
Yeah, I think like Ivan or Vanya, like he looks too young, like illegally young
to be in the strip club.
I was like, wait, like this is not what I was expecting for like her to meet when they said a high roller is here. Yeah. You know, but at the same time, it's interesting because we never seen anything like this. So I think automatically I was thinking, okay, why is he rich? Yeah. And what does he do? Right.
I mean, my first thought, of course, is daddy's money, right? Or he's like, you know, Mark Zuckerberg or something like that. I didn't know where the movie was going. But like you said, we've never seen something like that. It subverts our idea of what the big money spender is. You know what I mean? Because in any other situation, it's a 70-year-old man, you know, coming to spend, you know, all the money he made from, I don't know, selling guns in African countries or something.
Yeah, or at least like a good 30, 40, you know?
Yeah, something like that, right? But so Ivan and Annie sort of like hit it off. Like when Ivan and Annie first meet, he goes into the back room to get like a private dance, and Annie makes it seems like he's very special by like giving him this private dance where she like pulls down her thong, and Ivan is like going out of control. He's like, "Whoa, this is amazing. You're so hot and beautiful." And then meanwhile, she's like blowing bubble gum and like kind of rolling her eyes. And then later on, Annie, you know, gives Ivan her number when, you know, he says like, "Can I see you later?" and stuff like that. What did you think about that, if anything?
Yeah, Vanya seems like he's like in the American dream, even though he's already rich. He's like, oh wow, America, everything is bigger and better. Like, you know, he has that like goofy, childish perspective on things, I think. And I was thinking for Ani, probably like if I was a sex worker, if I was a stripper, I would much rather like strip on a guy that's close to my age than an older guy. And I'm guessing like most of the guys there are older than Annie. Yeah. So it's like a okay situation, you know? Yeah. It's like more advantageous than all the other older dudes that just like, you know, drool on her. Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, this is the thing, right? Like, because Annie ends up like going to Vanya's house after that thing, right? And they basically, you know, have sex for money. That's what happens, you know, essentially. And I really wish the film, like, let us know, is this something Annie does often? Has she often done house calls? You know what I mean? Yeah, I was thinking about that. And, you know, later on in the film, basically she gets called a prostitute by the rest of the people and stuff like that. And Annie takes great offense to that. But essentially, you know, how Vanya and, you know, Annie really got together was through prostitution, right? Yeah. So, I don't know. I really wish they fleshed that part out. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, my theory is that she probably did this before, but not like... It's not like she's giving blowjobs for $5, you know? I think maybe she's doing it for, like, only the high payers. And maybe the people that she somewhat is... attracted to, right? You know, because she does still make money just by like dancing, so she doesn't really have to do it. But hey, like if a guy's gonna pay her $1,000 for a night, then why not? I feel like that was her mentality. I can see that. You know what I mean? It's just like I feel like the movie really wants us to sympathize with Ani, maybe unfairly. You know what I mean? Because I would like her to be a bit more complicated as a character. But let's keep it absolutely real, because we're like so far like bashing this movie like 10 minutes, 12 minutes into the review. Overall, when we were watching it, we were enjoying the experience though, at least for me, right? Because like the way they shot it is cool, like the way when Annie pulls up to the house and the camera is moving, panning around and stuff like that, and we see the luxury, and also the acting as well. So I want to give a shout out to the actors. You know, Mikey Madison does a great job as Annie, and the Russian guy, Mark Eydelshteyn, I don't know how to say that. Eydelshteyn, whatever, right? The guy who plays Vanya does really well as being like this goofy, kind of nerdy, you know, awkward Russian guy in America who's sort of like this, you know, gamer geek. You know what I mean? But what did you think about any of those things? What I found interesting in their interaction was that like Annie was kind of like had this I'm a shy girl vibe. You know, she was smiling and she was like, okay, so what do you want now? You know, and usually like when you think of sex workers, you think like they're a bit more ratchet because they've been through it all. Yeah. You know, so they are not going to take shit from anybody. But with Annie, like she was just very calm and sweet to him all the time. And then in some instances where she's talking to her friends and stuff, we see her ratchetness a little bit so far in the movie. Yeah. I mean, we will see more of it later, but you know, it's that I think they maybe did that on purpose, like you said, to make us sympathize with her. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the way Annie acts around Vanya, it makes me feel like maybe she doesn't do this often, and also maybe she's only been stripping or sex working for like 2 weeks. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, Miss Shy Girl, I don't do this often. You know what I mean? I mean, also, like, even with the sex scenes, it's not like she's doing something, you know, weird or crazy. I mean, she's just riding it. Yeah, like, she pulls up and she's like, so what type of sex do you want? And he's like, you know, hot sex or something like that. And she... Like, that's what he writes to search for porn. Yeah. He's that guy on the Pornhub searches talking about like hot chick. Yeah. Like the number one search term in like New Hampshire, hot girl. Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, basically Vanya and
Yvonne, they start talking some more after they have sex for the first time. And we find out that Vanya is 21 and Ani is like 23. And she's asking him, like, what do you do for work? And he's like joking at first, like, I'm a big drug dealer. And we're like, bruh, shut up. He's like, no, I sell guns. You're like, shut the fuck up. And he's like, no, my dad is, I forgot the dad's name, but he's basically like this very famous Russian oligarch.
Nikolai Zakharov.
Yes, the character's name is Nikolai Zakharov. And, we don't know exactly what he does, but he must be extremely wealthy. And, he's so wealthy that if you Google his father, his son, like, has a page too. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's how you know you're really balling, right? So that's how we find out how Vanya is able to live in this mansion sort of by himself and ball out of control. What did you think about that revelation?
I was kind of expecting him to be in some shady business, or not him, but like his family or his father. Mm-hmm. I was expecting that, and when it wasn't, I was like, oh, okay, like this is not really what I expected. It's going very vanilla right now.
I mean, Russian billionaire to me does not scream vanilla because number one, like Russian billionaires like get killed by their own government, right? Like Russian billionaires get pushed out of windows. I was listening to this podcast where they're basically covering every single Russian billionaire who's been killed since the Ukrainian war. And it's like enough to count on both hands, which is unthinkable. Like we're applauding Luigi in America just for getting one. Putin's been knocking them off since like 2021.
I mean, 2022. It's the socialist and communist past.
I guess so, man. Putin's a real communist. He really hates billionaires. But also on top of that, like somebody with $1 billion that comes from like a mafia state like Russia has enough money to make you and everybody you love disappear. You know what I mean? So I was thinking the movie was going to go in the direction like, oh, Ani's going to get like, her knees broken, thrown into the back of a car, you know what I mean? Made to disappear. You know what I mean? That's what I was thinking.
I was kind of expecting that too, honestly. But then later, like when it started to get goofy, I was like, okay, I don't think like they're going to go to that direction. Okay.
Well, let's talk about the goofy part because this is where you and I disagree a bit. So basically, when Vanya reveals that, his father's a billionaire and super wealthy, Ani's pussy starts to twitch uncontrollably.
Oh my God.
She cannot now keep it in her pants. And so she's going back to her stripper girlfriends and she's like, bitch, guess what? I hit the lotto. I'm about to secure the bag. I'm ovulating tomorrow. She starts taking like all sorts of like fertility pills and shit like that, injections. I'm joking. But basically she tells her girlfriends like, I'm about to come up, and like there's this other stripper girl who's like hating on her. And so basically, we see Yvonne and Ani start to hang out more. Like she comes to his house and strips for him privately. Then they have sex for like 2 seconds and then they play video games. Go ahead.
Yeah, but also like how that happens is basically Yvonne hires her as her horny girlfriend for the week. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of how it happens. Like first he hires her for one night, mm-hmm. and then after that like he hires her for a week.
Yeah, right? Well, that was after the party, right? But either way, that's still essentially what happens.
So she's getting paid like while they're hanging out.
Yeah, he continues to pay like thousands of dollars just to have her around for hours and hours and hours, right? And he doesn't care because after he fucks, he just like plays video games and forgets that the toll is still going up. But eventually, he invites her to a party. And Annie gets to meet all of his Russian friends and, is sort of like welcomed into that group. And his friends see Annie and like, yo, that's the hooker he's banging and stuff like that. And, Annie is sort of just like going along with the flow. And, essentially, at that party, they have sex that night. And then, Vanya says to Ani that night, like, how about you be my girlfriend for the week after that party? Yeah. Right. But what did you think of the party scene and that, proposition, anything like that?
One thing that was like sticking out for me was that like whenever they had sex, Ani and Yvonne, like Ani was somewhat making fun of him, like giggling and, just like laughing at him behind his back. Mm-hmm. And I felt like that was the one thing she had advantage over him. because, you know, oh, he's like, obviously he's very rich and he's like young and funny and all this sorts of things. But Ani is at least like experienced in sex. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I felt like that was the only time she could exercise her dominance. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, still, Yvonne was holding control of the sex as well. So it's, I don't know. I felt like I couldn't completely feel happy for Annie about what was happening to her, even though she was starting to like live a good life, I guess. Mm-hmm. Enjoying a mansion and drinks and food as much as she wants. But yeah, I felt like somewhat bad for her because I felt like truly in her heart she wasn't having fun or she wasn't being pleased.
Yeah. I mean, every time they show them having sex, like Vanya is hitting it like a rabbit on steroids. Like he's hitting it like watching a YouTube boxing match on like 2X. Like you know what I mean? He is insane how he is hitting it. And like you said, Ani is like rolling her eyes and basically not enjoying it. And you know what? It's like Ani probably in the back of her head is like, this little boy is so like immature and stupid, but kind of cute in a weird way. You know what I mean? Because they're in that same sort of demographic where they like the same things and have the same sort of sensibility, I would say.
I don't know. I just had that experience where you have to be nice to a guy because like, it's not that I did for any of my flirts or anything like that. But for example, when a friend of mine had a guy and we were all together in a table, you have to be nice to him. Mm-hmm. And if he's an asshole or if he's like a extreme toxic man, I'm like, I'm trying to be nice to her, not to start drama in the table. So that's just for me very draining emotionally. Yeah. And that's what I was feeling for Annie like throughout this whole part.
Yeah, a little bit. I can definitely see that. So, yeah, basically Vanya offers, to pay her $15,000 a week to be his girlfriend. And so now Ani is staying with Vanya all the time. She's like in his Russian clique circle. And he's, Vanya is friends with like other rich Russian kids who basically like bullshit at like, candy shops as jobs, as front jobs, I guess, as they launder their parents' money and stuff like that. And basically smoking weed all day, playing video games, and having sex with Vanya. And then one day, while Vanya and his friends are getting really high, they say, "Hey man, let's go to Vegas. Yeah, let's go to Vegas." And so they all hop on the private jet. They go to Vegas and they start doing a bunch of drugs there, gambling, partying, shit like that. Just basically one big montage. What did you think of those scenes?
I mean, the montage was fun because, like, I guess you remember your youth a little bit, but at the same time,
I didn't hop on private jets.
Yeah, that was what I was gonna say. Like, we never were that rich. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe you remember your teenage fantasies.
Yeah, what you wish you could do.
Yeah, and also you feel like. Okay, so Yvonne is like a bit weird because he does these weird jokes where he would like, they go into the hotel and their room is not yet ready yet. And then he screams at the receptionist first. And then he says like, "Oh no, man, I'm joking. We'll wait. So it's like, it's very passive aggressive and somewhat like weird that I felt like he wanted to use his power, but he also wanted to fit in as one of the others as well.
Yeah, I feel like he just watched too much like Scarface. Yeah. He watched Scarface a million times. It's like, bro, I'm going to do that. Say hello to my little friend. He's that guy that quotes Scarface all the time. Just at weird times too.
Yeah, I don't know. That was like very annoying for me about Vanya. But overall, the montage was fun and cute. Though still, I had the same thing for Ani in the back of my head. But hey, like if I was in her position, I'll probably like go with the guy too. Yeah. And like I would do it also because, like I said, he's young. At least like he's not old. He doesn't have sagging balls. Yeah. So it's like, it's okay.
Yeah. So when they go to Vegas one night, Vanya says, we're in Vegas. I have to go back to Russia soon. But if I marry an American, I can stay here in America. And so Ani's like, well, maybe you can marry an American. And she's like, who? Well, she says, well, maybe I can marry one of your stripper friends. They're very hot. Maybe I can marry you. And Ani's like, bitch, quit playing. And so, Vanya says, really, I want to marry you. And he kind of mans up at that one moment and gets very serious. We hadn't seen Vanya serious at any point up to that point. And they end up going to this place in Vegas where you can get married 24/7, and they get married. They're very happy. All their friends are celebrating and stuff like that. And Ani is like, I secured the bag. And I think she makes a promise that she needs a 5-carat diamond ring or something like that, at least, to do it. Something like that. But what did you think of that scene?
That was kind of infuriating a little bit, because I understand that Ani wants to secure the bag, and that's an opportunity, right? But at the same time, this kid is high and drunk 24/7. And also he said something like this: I love you, Annie, and even though we don't have my parents' money, we would be happy together. So if he said that to me at that point, I'd be like, whoa. Wait, what? What are you talking about?
What do you mean, no money?
Yeah, I can't understand how she heard that sentence and just went with it.
Yeah,
without questioning it. That was just so naive.
I think he said that, number one, because he knew his parents would be pissed, right? And secondly, he was trying to finally test her, give her one last test to see, do you like me for my money or not? And I think Ani passed the test, honestly. Which still makes me wonder, though, did she really like him? Did she actually like Vanya? Do you think so? Because I think yes. I think yes, because, you don't just marry a guy because of his dad's money, right? And I'm just thinking for myself, I'm older than Ani, but I'm like, there's no way that, he's going to have this money forever, right? And his parents might be pissed and cut him off because he married me. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. Do you think Ani actually liked him to say after he said that?
I think Ani truly loved him 20%.
Oh, so it's 80% money and 20%.
It's not exactly money, but it's the convenience of having that lifestyle, I would say. And also, Vanya is not a guy that's, bad to be around. So, it's it probably, possibly, sort of her best option ever that she could come across. Mm-hmm. Marrying an oligarch that has millions, and he's living this lifestyle where he's constantly partying, and she's that same age where she wants to party probably. And she likes his friend group. So it's the convenience of him, I think, what's made her take that step. And she said I can grow to love him.
I think, man, for me, go ahead.
One last thing. And also, Vanya treated her like she's a princess. He constantly told her she's so pretty, she's so smart, all of these things. And that's also, I think, a big factor for women to be appreciated and to be seen. And I feel like Vanya did that. Mm-hmm. So I think she also felt okay, here's a man that respects me and loves me as well. Mm-hmm. As we watch him hit it from the back.
I think Vanya is good at putting up a front, right?
That's the thing.
Vanya is Drake, right?
Yeah.
Vanya is Drake in the sense that he's a lame dude who just so happened to get money. He's that soft dude who really has no manliness or natural charm or charisma that can keep people around him. He just has money to do it, right? And maybe Ani, in her naivete, because she's only been stripping for 2 weeks and only had 3 Johns that she sold the coochie to, let's keep it frank, she don't really know the game yet. You know what I mean? She doesn't know that fast money leaves even faster. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so she's thinking, well, shit, if I can get a billionaire and he even marries me, then I'm good. But it don't work like that. Like, it takes more work to get the bag. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. And that's why, like, I said, like, okay, he just said that he might lose all of his money if he marries you. Mm-hmm. Then why are you, like, doing this, girl? Yeah.
And I think in that scene when they were in the bed talking about that, like, I was thinking, I was hoping Ani was thinking, like, girl, you are a hoe. Let's keep it absolutely a buck. Girl, you a hoe. And we have to remember always our place somewhat in our lives. You know what I mean? Like, if, I don't know, Halle Berry knocks on the door and asks for my hand in marriage, number one, I'm not going to say yes because, you know, I'm married. But secondly, like, why the fuck is this beautiful woman coming at me? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The same thing, right? Like, it's like how on 90 Day Fiancé, we always say, oh, these people are crazy. It's a 60-year-old white woman marrying like a 24-year-old like hot Moroccan man.
Yeah.
You have to know that this man wants more from you than just your love. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think most of the time people know that. Like, I think Vanya was not that delusional that to think Ani was just purely in love with him and didn't want any of his money.
But I'm talking about from Ani's perspective. You have to realize, like, in this situation, you're really setting yourself up for big failure in the future. Because number one, you're not going to be hot forever, Ani. Number two, you probably don't have much skills or anything else to offer than your beauty. And that will soon fade. So what are you going to be 30, 40 years from now if you're still married to Vanya? You're going to be that girl who has to give your husband to another woman, right? You're going to have those open relationships. You're going to have nasty threesomes with girls 15 years younger than you because Vanya's now saying, you know, I married you and you ruined my life. Now bring me hot girls. You know what I mean?
Wow. I mean, I don't think Annie was that much worried about that because even if she only stayed married to him for a year, she could get a lot of money out of that.
You think so?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so they get married. They end up going back to New York, which is where this movie like takes place. And, you know, Ani is like celebrating now. She goes back to the strip club and everybody's like really happy for her. Like her boss who used to hate her is saying like, you did it, girl. But there is one person who is still hating on her, and that's the other stripper who Diamond always had beef with Ani. And she says, I give it 2 weeks tops. And Ani like gets up in her face and gives her a kiss and says, jealousy is a motherfucker, bitch, and like leaves the strip club. And basically she ends up like shacking up with Vanya while he like plays video games all day and like basically like Russian serfs like clean the floor under his feet while he plays Call of Duty. And you know, Vanya's handlers find out that he got married and now they are pissed. They are absolutely pissed. He has 2 handlers. One's name is
Garnick and Igor.
Yes. Garnick is one, and also Toros.
Toros is like a bit stronger than them.
Toros is the main handler.
Yeah.
Garnick is the second handler, and Igor is basically their muscle. And they find out about this, and they are absolutely pissed because, you know, Ivan's parents are like calling Toros saying, what has my stupid son done this time? But what did you think about any of those scenes?
I mean, yeah, when we see Annie like leaving the strip club, it's happy. And honestly, I don't blame Diamond that much because like eventually how it started, like their beef started was that Diamond maybe had a boyfriend or a guy that she was hanging out with, and Annie danced for him. Mm-hmm. And that's why Diamond like is pissed at Annie. Mm-hmm. So that's why like she's a hater, which is somewhat understandable, like okay. And I just don't like the fact that Annie is just sitting around the house all day just hugging him. Because I feel like that's not reality. And that's not really real.
Yeah. I mean, they're having their honeymoon stage. You know what I mean? And at that honeymoon stage, it looks like, you know, Ani is like, I don't know how to say this, like kind of caught in the middle, like between like, okay, what is this seriously going to be? You know, I don't think she really thought about, okay, what is the rest of my life going to look like with this guy? Because the rest of his life for him is like reaching level 47 in, I don't know, Warhammer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know, she's laid up with him and he's not like talking to his parents. He's like ignoring phone calls. And she's like, did you tell them about us? Did you tell them about us? And he's like, I tell them later. Don't worry about it. And meanwhile, you know, we find Toros. He's basically like a preacher at this like Armenian church. And Toros is in the crowd as well. And I guess they're doing like a baptism for the kid. But then when, you know, he finds out that, you know, Vanya is really married after Garrick and the Russians show up at the house and take a picture of the marriage certificate. He takes off his like Christian robes and walks outside of the church and says, get that motherfucker on the phone and keep him there right now. That was absolutely hilarious. I love that scene. But any comments on that?
Yeah, like when we are introduced to the big guys or like the protectors or whatever, it gets, like you said, you have that thought of like, oh, they're gonna fuck Ani up or something, like what are they gonna do to her? But at the same time, it's like both Garnick and Igor, they are the first ones that are in the house, and they're just like funny. Like when so Garnick takes like Vanya up to the office to see their like wedding certificate, and Igor and Ani are there alone in the living room, and Ani is basically like in her underwear, like just very vulnerable. And Igor is like, hello, my name is Igor. And Ani's like, what is happening? And Igor is like, I don't know. So it's like, they're a bit goofy, and I like that.
For me, it wasn't goofy. And I know that's one of the main comedic scenes in this film. To me, it did not feel funny. And we'll disagree. Like when Vanya and when Vanya is trying to like push Igor and Garnick out of his house, then they burst in and they're trying to chase this little, you know, Twinkie boy around the crib and keep him there. It didn't feel funny. And then when they got to the part where they were like, you know, telling Annie to stay and Vanya left her, and they were trying to like keep her in the house too, and she's like kicking them, biting them, and then Igor ends up like tying her up with like a telephone cord and stuff like that. To me, that didn't feel funny. I don't know. Tell me what you thought about that scene.
It wasn't like laugh out loud funny, but it was amusing. I would say that, because I was not expecting, because usually like the way Russian, you know, big guys, Russian mafia, they're not mafia, but, you know, those type of guys are portrayed differently in Hollywood, right? And they're, like, scary, they're breaking kneecaps, they have guns, knives, they can fight for their lives and stuff like that. But when Garnick and Igor is there, they're, like, not trying to hurt Ani, but they're just, like, trying to control her and make her stay in a place. And, like, when they can't do that, like, Ani breaks Garnick's nose because she just kicks him in the face. Mm-hmm. And also, I would like attribute some of the humor to Annie as well, because so far she's been acting like this innocent girl with Vanya, but when she's faced with them, she's cursing a lot. Like she's just, you know, uncontrollably, you know, physically running around, breaking everything. So I think like it's just the shift of it sort of makes it amusing.
I got you. That is a big character shift. Like the movie, you know, for Ani is very different after this scene. Like you said, she turns into like this firecracker fighting Joyzy girl, and the accent comes out and all this stuff. Like she becomes a F-bomb dropping, like SOB all over this thing. You feel me? So, I just thought, you know, because I went into this movie with no expectations and no idea what was going to happen. I thought it was going to lead to torture. And maybe that's why I thought it wasn't funny. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, you thought it was a horror movie?
I didn't. Horror-ish, or, you know, because to win the Palme d'Or, you know, the movies we saw for the Palme d'Or is like Titane. You know what I mean? Like
you have to have a human from inside you.
Yeah, like something horrific is going to happen to Annie for this film to be considered one of the best films ever. I don't know. But, yeah, basically, you know, Vanya runs away and leaves Annie there. What did you think about that? Because that's also a major part of this film. Because Vanya is like, come on, Annie, we gotta go. And she's like, no, let me go get my phone and my clothes. And then there's that brief moment where he just says, fuck it, and just like runs away down the street like barefoot. Any comments?
I mean, when he ran away, that's when I knew, like, this kid ain't shit. Mm-hmm. Like, he's just trying to save his own ass from getting, like, slapped by mama. Mm-hmm. You know, he's just afraid of his parents meanwhile he got married. Like, mm-hmm. Those are two very different things. As a grown married man, I don't think you would be afraid that your mom would be mad at you.
No, not at all.
Yeah, and, like, same for me. So, yeah, that at that time, I was like, okay.
But it's different.
He's still a mama's boy.
But it's different, right? Because, you know, he depends on his parents, right? So if his parents say, we're going to cut you off because you married the prostituta, you know what I mean? He's gonna think differently. I never lived off my parents, so I'm going to do what I want with my life.
Yeah, but he said to Ani, like, we would still be okay without my parents' money.
Yeah, but he was high too.
That's the thing, like, you know, that's when he ran away. I was like, okay, he is not shit.
Yeah.
So.
And he didn't really love Annie.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Because, how can you do that with these big guys in the house?
Right. So basically, Toros comes over to the house and finds, like, Annie tied up. And, you know, she is, like, cursing at him, like, let me go, and stuff like that. And he's like, okay, I'm going to let you go, but you have to know, like, this marriage is over. We're going to go get this annulled. It's done. And Annie's like, we're not going to do that. That's my husband, and I love him. He bought me this fucking diamond carat ring, you son of a bitch, and stuff like that. And she says, I might even be pregnant by him. And he says, oh, no, you are not pregnant. We're going to get rid of that, too. And so, basically, they're, like, trying to call Vanya from the phone, but he's not answering. He's not picking up his phone at all. And so they all get into the car and they just start rolling around the city looking for Vanya. And, you know, she's very pissed the entire time. And it's Igor, her, and Toros and Garnick cruising around the city, going to place. They go to restaurants. They go to the candy shop where they were at before with the other Russian people. They're running around to where he previously ate at and shopped at, you know, showing their pictures to everybody. What did you think about those scenes?
If I was Annie and my guy ran away and then, like, they came and they say, we're going to get this thing annulled, I'm, like, looking to do a business transaction there. I'm like, how much are you going to pay me to get this annulled? Yeah. Because at that point, I don't think I would be trusting this guy that I know for maybe a month, tops. Right. I'm not going to go for that. And I'm going to try to, like, get as much money out of it as possible.
I think Toro said that, too. Because Toro said, listen, this was a sham marriage, so you deserve a sham fee or something like that. So he offered her, like, $15,000. He said that.
10,000, like, green card fee.
Yeah, green card fee, something like that, right? Which I would have said, make it $1 million and I'd be gone. Like, this whole movie would have been over very quickly. Yeah. Like, $1 million plus is what you need.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's what I would do as well. Yeah. I would just, like, make a deal and get lost, because at the end of the day, I don't think Annie liked him that much, but they tried to constantly make it seem that way.
Yeah. And just to keep it real, like, $1 million is like $1,000 to the average person. Yeah. Like, they could easily shell that out. Annie could have easily got that. You know what I mean? But this movie wants to be, you know, tell a larger story. As far as, like, the searching for Vanya scenes, it was interesting, number one, because the entire movie is acted very well and it's done very interestingly. But that part, if you think about it, is kind of like dragging down. Other than the scene when, like, Igor walks into the candy shop and he, like, breaks everything like it's very normal. You know what I mean? And I like Igor's character too. Just to talk about him a bit, they keep on calling him a gopnik, which is the Russian word for, like, redneck, like an ignorant person who is only meant to basically be like a slave or something like that. And so, but Igor, you know, throughout the film sort of shows himself to be like an honorable man, low key. You know, like in the scene when he's chasing Annie around the house, he doesn't purposely try to hurt her or hit her. He follows orders like a good soldier, but he also has a good moral code as well. So I like Igor's character. But any comments on any of that?
Yeah, he's like somewhat of like a stereotypical quiet guy who just is used for his physical qualities, as a bodyguard. And I like him too because he doesn't say a lot, but the camera shows him often. And I think he says some things with his gestures most of the time, or just like with one simple word. And I think we can sense that, okay, he's somewhat of a important character in understanding the inner world of this story.
Yeah.
Because he's like that quiet eye.
Yeah.
That sort of like sees everything that's happening and seeing all the injustice that Annie is going through because she went down this path with Vanya. So I feel like he's just like that, learning voice.
Yeah.
And
the learning voice, the quiet voice. When we were talking about this movie last night, and this is gonna relate more to the end, but you were making a very good point last night that you see a lot of class in this movie in the sense that it talks more about class than it does feminism or gender. And this film is about a rich Russian billionaire, but we also see sprinkled throughout the people under them who sort of do their bidding and suck up to them because they need them, but also because they want more favors and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And, that's what we see Toros do. Galina, Vanya's mom, gets on the phone, screams at him, and all he says is, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am. Like, Garnick is scared of, like, Toros and is, like, listening to his every word and stuff like that. And they all try to be, like, respectful to, like, Vanya, because Vanya is like the prize golden cow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Ani gets disrespected. The Russian people that sweep the house all day, they get maybe a few tips here and there and stuff like that to do extra work. Yeah. And they watch the wealth all around them. Like, what did you think about that?
I definitely see like a lot of class themes in this movie because I think it started with like obviously Annie being a sex worker because sex workers are seen as like one of the lowest classes because they do like work like all of us, but they're like selling their body and it's usually seen as like the last resort to make money and make a living. And same with like jobs like what Igor does. He's like a hitman or a bodyguard or just someone who sells his track record and also his body, to make money, and he doesn't question anything. Mm-hmm. Like those jobs are like seen low. I think maybe because people think that they don't require a lot of mental work, which they do actually. But I thought that was interesting. And also we see Annie, like earlier in the movie, interacting with the housekeepers. Mm-hmm. For example, she's like lifting her legs when the lady is trying to sweep like that part of the house. Mm-hmm. And
Vanya doesn't do that.
Yeah, Vanya doesn't do that, but Vanya offers the housekeeper a hit from the bong. Mm-hmm. So we can see like, again, Vanya trying to like relate to the low class, but he's like unable to. Yeah. Because like
he thinks being nice to them is putting their job at risk.
Yeah, like and then he tells Annie like, one time like the housekeeper was caught like smoking weed,
and he thought that was funny, as if like she probably also didn't get yelled at, or it's a Russian billionaire, so they could have like electrocuted her, tortured her.
Yeah, and like this woman has been cleaning your mess for like the last 3 hours. She doesn't need a hit from the bomb.
Yeah, well maybe she does, but she also needs a raise, health insurance, maybe I don't know, school voucher, I don't know, something like that.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. So I think I thought honestly like there was a lot of class clash in this movie. And that's why I think the director decided to connect, maybe this is a bit of spoiler, but connect Igor and Ani. Yeah. Or we see Igor understanding Ani at certain points in the movie.
Yeah. So basically, the next 20, 30 minutes of the film is them running around the city trying to chase Vanya wherever he is. And They basically find him at the strip club after asking like a few bars, hey, have you seen this kid? And he was like, yeah, he was too drunk to get in here. But apparently, he's not too drunk enough to get back into the strip club. So they find him at the strip club, and guess who's giving him a lap dance? Diamond, the ex-enemy of Ani. Because when Vanya walks in, Diamond's like, bitch, guess who just walked in? Big Russian tipper, Ani's man. And so she like jumps all over him. And now that you reminded me, it's like she's getting back at Ani for giving a dance to her guy.
Yeah.
Right? But now she's doing it again, to get some revenge. So Ani sees Vanya, and Vanya is like too drunk to even understand what is happening. And Toros and Garnick like pull him out of the strip club. Diamond is pissed because, she's like, there's still time for me to have my dance. And Ani's like, F you, we're getting out of here. I'm taking my husband. And Diamond is yelling like, you ain't shit, bitch. And they basically like get into a fight in there, and all this other stripper girls are like running out there to see the fight too as it happens, as Toros is dragging Vanya out as he continues to drink. What did you think of that?
I really hated Vanya like at that scene because he was like a 6-year-old that doesn't understand whatever they are saying to him. And the thing is, like, I think Ani, throughout the whole search part of it, she was like hoping to find Vanya and talk to him and pursue him that they should be together. And they should
persuade him.
Together. Yeah. And then on the other hand, Toros and Garnick, they're like trying to find Vanya so that they can get the marriage annulled. Mm-hmm. So Ani had like this window of hope, and I think as soon as like she saw him, like that hope just died. Mm-hmm. Which I think after this part of the movie, I feel like Annie's aggression or just behavior is like being mad at herself. Mm-hmm. And also Vanya, but herself like just for falling into something like this.
Yeah, I mean, I was a bit more mad at her, you know what I mean? Because I'm like, why are you still like trying to convince this guy? He ran away from you, he's drunk as hell, and now, when you actually get to speak with him, he's not, manning up at this point. And I know it might be hard to do it if you're drunk, but if it's something you really believe in, you know what I mean? No matter how drunk I am, nobody's going to just take my cell phone and I'm just going to laugh and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And especially, no matter how drunk I am, nobody's going to say, you need to divorce your wife. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, throughout the movie, Toros says multiple times that Vanya is a kid, which he is. And
he's 21, but that's how they view him, right? Because he has a childlike way of living and thinking.
Yeah, like when he's drunk or high, he acts like a 12-year-old, basically. And, but yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
So basically, they drive in front of the courthouse that night, and they wait there all night. They wait there in front of the courthouse all night for it to open up. And, Toros, Garnick, Igor, and Vanya are standing there with Ani as well, meeting the lawyer. And Vanya is so drunk, he can't even stand up. The lawyer is like, okay, we have a good thing. The judge rushed us to be first in line today, so we can probably get this thing annulled, done, easy peasy, right? They walk in there, and Toros has to, like, hold up Vanya the entire time. And when they go in front of the judge, Annie just starts basically shrieking, like, I don't want to annul my husband. These people are, like, forcing me to do this. I don't want a divorce. And she's, like, telling Vanya, tell him, Vanya, tell him. And, the judge is like, hey, none of that screaming. And Toros is making it worse by saying, objection, Your Honor, she shouldn't be talking, as if he's a lawyer or something like that. That was one of the most annoying Toros scenes, by the way.
Yeah.
But, basically Vanya says, yeah, can't you see? I'm drunk. That's all he says. And, Annie says, we got married in Nevada. And the lawyer turns to Toros and he's pissed, like, they got married in Nevada? You can't fucking annul marriages in Nevada. They have different marriage laws, because that's how it is in the U.S. We have different marriage laws. But, so they basically then leave the courthouse and say, we have to go to Nevada right now to get this done. But what did you think of that scene?
Yeah, I was like somewhat relieved when Annie started like speaking up for herself, because I was like, okay, like maybe the judge will listen to her and not annul this marriage. I didn't know like that you couldn't get annulled in a different state. And once again, like Vanya is so annoying at this time because he's not like aware of what is happening, and I thought he would have sobered up by now because he slept.
Yeah, but he was hella drunk, man.
Yeah, I guess. And, yeah, and Toros and, you know, like the way he was acting towards Ani, I feel like deep down inside he wanted to, like, fuck up Vanya and give her more money, but he just didn't because he's more loyal to the family than to Annie.
Yeah.
Because he's a worker, too, like you said.
Definitely. So yeah, they basically, you know, get in the car again, and Annie is like, I don't want to get in the car, and Vanya is not responding at all. Like, she is talking to him, and he is just like out of it, zonked out, and stuff like that. But yeah, they end up, you know, flying to Nevada. They hop on another private jet, and they go there. And also at the same time that all of this is happening, by the way, we forgot to mention this, but Vanya's parents are coming back. As soon as they found out that he got married, they hopped on the first plane smoking and came back to America. So that's why Toros and Garnick and all of them were chasing Vanya so hard. So they end up flying to Nevada, and that's also at the same time when we get to meet Vanya's family.
It was before they fly.
What do you mean?
They meet at the airport and they're about to fly together.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
sorry, you're right. I'm sorry. Yeah, they go to the New York airport, and where the private jet is, there's like this epic scene when the billionaire Russians come, and we first meet, you know, Vanya's mother.
Galina.
Yes, Galina, who is, you know, exactly what you would imagine like a Russian billionaire's wife to be. Crop cut, earth tone pantsuits, piercing blue eyes, smelling like Chanel number 7 through the screen.
The greatest depiction of BB's wife.
Yes, she is like Sarah Netanyahu with a proper facelift. And a buccal fat remover. So yeah, anyway, Galina walks in, and you know, she looks at her drunk son and she's like, my baby and stuff like that, but you're so stupid. And then at the same time, this is when Annie starts speaking Russian, and she says in her broken Russian, you know, I'm very glad to meet you, Miss Galina. My name is Annie, and I'm so proud to be your son's wife and a part of your family. And I feel like that scene might hit harder if we knew Russian, because maybe it's like she's spoken in broken Russian and she said, I'm so happy to be a horse moose or something like that. You know what I mean? I'm so happy to be in your
mother.
Yes, I'm so happy to be your mother and now your son's fucker or something like that. Like she said it all fucked up. Yeah. Because the way everybody cringed when she said it, it was like me trying to speak Turkish to your grandma.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. But what did you think of that scene?
Galina is definitely like scary because she just like is storming off, and she's like that person that doesn't have any respect for anyone that works under her. She's just like, the way they portrayed her, it's like she's heartless and she doesn't really care anything else other than like her business, her family, and their reputation.
Yeah, that's the Karen that will execute the manager.
Yeah, exactly. And like, you know, she's almost making fun of Annie for thinking that she could ever be part of their family because she's a prostitute, you know? Yeah. So obviously that was harsh, and I felt so bad for Annie because I'm like, bitch, you're still trying.
Yeah, she's really
like,
trying.
Drop it, please.
She's trying to secure this bag so hard, and it's almost like laughable to some degree. You know, because she says in English now to Galina, like, I am married to your son and we are in love. And at the same time, you know, all Vanya can say to his mom is like, Mom, is this a part of a new collection? And she's like, yes, it's part of the new collection. Shut the fuck up, you idiot.
Yeah. I mean, I sort of wished in my heart that Galina had somewhat of a connection with Annie. Not in the sense that she would accept her into the family, but just understanding that because his son probably does this to other girls as well. I mean, probably he didn't get married before, but he just like brought some girl home.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So I wish like she had somewhat of a girl code and felt bad for what happened to Annie.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
But we have to remember the stakes are very high. Like Galena says to her son the first time she sees him, it's like, you made us an embarrassment in the media. You know what I mean? Like, that's how big of a deal, like, their son marrying this American hooker is. You know what I mean? So, basically, you know, Ani is walking with Vanya to the private jet, and Vanya is, like, basically ignoring her while she's saying, like, talk to your parents, talk to them, tell them we're in love and stuff like that. And then when Vanya's about to get on the plane, Ani says bluntly, Vanya, be a man and fucking talk to me. And so he turns around and says, what you want me to say, Ani? And so she's like,
are we getting a divorce?
Are we getting a divorce? And he says, yes. Are you stupid? And I was like, damn, that's heartless. Yeah. And so then Galena comes back out and tells Annie, get on the plane. And she's like, nope. I'm going to get a lawyer and I'm going to get a divorce. And I was finally like, good job, Annie. Let's turn this film into a legal drama. That's what I wanted this to be. Like in a courtroom, Annie with like a big fur coat or looking like Megan Thee Stallion walking into prosecutory lanes. I wanted Annie to go full on in, you know, take this money. Take the money, bitch. Yeah. But then, you know, Galena says like, what will you do? Do you have a car? Do you have a house? You have nothing, and we will break you. And we will take everything from you and from everyone you love. And I was like, that's a threat. That's a scary threat coming from this woman. You know what I mean? So, Annie gets on the plane, and I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Like, bitch, this is America. This is not Moscow. You can fight. You can fight. You have legal rights, okay?
Yeah, but I think one of the most important things in that scene was that Igor was present. And basically when Ani was refusing to go into the plane, she was facing Igor. And Igor was just waiting for her to go into the plane. And I felt like Galena threatened her. And the only witness is Igor for all of these things. Like, if he testifies with Annie, then, like, they could probably win the money together and then, like, split it in half. And I felt like Annie was just waiting for that glimpse of something from Igor so that, you know, she might continue fighting, maybe, even though she hates him. And, but he doesn't do that. But at the same time, I feel like we still kind of feel Igor has a lot of sympathy for Annie. But I just wish he did something at that moment. Yeah,
but I think this film also makes us remember, you know, and they do it very well by making people remember, like, you know, these people are operating somewhat above the law because of their wealth. Right? Like, we might say, oh, Annie, you have rights, or Igor, you could testify. Like, these people, once again, they're Russian, they're billionaires, they could easily hop on a PJ after dumping your body in the Pacific Ocean and nobody would ever know or care what happened to you.
Yeah, and that's why I think because Igor didn't do that, like, that's the reason.
Yeah.
And also some of the reasons why Annie, like, gets on the plane, you know, after she's being threatened, she knows it's real. It's a real threat.
Yeah.
So that's why, like, they can't, you know. Turkish saying time.
Go ahead.
Bükemediğin eli öpersin. If you can't bend a hand, then you should kiss it.
Okay.
You know, if you can't bend the law, if you can't bend whoever is like making the law, then you're gonna have to kiss it.
And that's what we see Toros and Garnet do when they get on the plane. They say to, you know, Galena and Vanya's dad, they say, it's such a pleasure to be in your honor. Thank you for allowing us to even breathe your same air. And Galena says, shut up, motherfucker.
We're having a family discussion.
We're having a family discussion. You shut your Armenian ass up. By the way, there's a lot of like Armenian, like just denigration in this film. Like every 5 minutes they say you dirty Armenian.
Yeah. I mean, that says a lot too. That's why like it's such a class theme.
Class and ethnic differences, right?
Yeah. Because, I mean, they're Armenian, and Armenia has also suffered from like Russia throughout the history, but they yet still choose to work for like this Russian family, and they respect them utmost.
Right.
Even maybe they don't in their heart, but like they show it that way.
Right. But I like also how in that scene on the private jet when Toros and Garnick are trying to kiss the Russian's ass, Annie hears Vanya say, "I was just fucking around with this prostituta," and then Annie stands up from the back of the plane and says very bravely in front of Galina, Vanya's dad, you know, "Your son is a fucking pussy. He's a bitch. You are a piece of shit, Vanya," and stuff like that. And so I was
that's the only time Galina agrees with Annie.
Yeah. And she says, "Yep, she's right." And I was like, if y'all gave this girl a chance, y'all would actually like her.
Yeah. Like y'all are similar.
Yeah. Like she could actually like run the empire.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Are you going to hand your $1 billion gold mining business in Siberia over to Vanya? Or Annie, you know what I mean? Exactly. Annie's gonna run that shit. You know what I mean?
And it was also interesting that like most of the time up until like the very end, we don't really hear anything from the dad, like Nikolai. He's just like the secret, not secret, but just silent like observer who feels like secretly is enjoying it.
Yeah. So anyway, they make it to Nevada. And they're in the, divorce room with the lawyer to do it, right? And, the Russian Galina is like heading the charge while basically Vanya's father is like sitting on the couch. Vanya's like drunk and he like signs the paper anyway. And Annie at a moment pauses and is about to not sign, but then she ends up signing anyway. But then after she signs, she goes off and like curses out Vanya, throws like the coat that, she has on Vanya, takes off the red scarf that Vanya gave her and like threw it on the floor and stuff like that to Galina to disrespect her. And Vanya's father is like laughing the entire time. And that's supposed to be like Annie, getting her get back on all of them to some degree and sort of like washing her hands of those people. What did you think of that scene, if anything?
Yeah. I mean, like we talked about, I understand Annie's frustration. And, like when she was about to sign it, I think she just had like a fuck it moment. And she was like, I can't deal with these people anymore because no matter what I do, I'm never going to be able to hurt them the way that they would hurt me. And at the end, yeah, she's trying to like get her last revenge sort of by trying to humiliate Vanya and his family. But it's like, these people are like they've hurt so many people probably, especially through Vanya because he's a careless child that they don't really even care about that stuff, especially coming from a hooker. They probably just don't really mind it that much, and that was just like her last attempt of like being seen. I felt like it was cathartic to hear it, like, oh, that's a good release, but it's not as good of a release as saying that now she gets to keep Vanya's house. You know what I mean? Like that would have been much better, you know what I mean, to see at the ending. But anyway, so basically Vanya and Igor get sent back to Annie.
I apologize. Annie and Igor get sent back to Vanya's house because she has to get her stuff there, and she's basically going to stay there for the last night. And one of the most important scenes is when Igor and Annie are like hanging out, watching TV, smoking cigarettes, and she is like still being like very mad at this guy because she only views him as like an abuser. She's like, you assaulted me, you battered me, you tied me up, you kidnapped me, and all this sort of stuff. And Igor is like, I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't assault you. I didn't really do that. And then, Annie says like, if Garnick wasn't there, you would have raped me. And then Igor says, why would I rape you? And then she says, because you have rape eyes. You have rapey eyes. And he's like, how do I have rape eyes? And stuff like that. And then he says, I wouldn't rape you. And then she says, what's a constant line that she says to him throughout this film? She says, you wouldn't rape me because you're a faggot ass bitch. Right? And then like walks away, drops the mic and like saunters away and stuff like that. And he is like kind of like left there like, okay. And what did you think of that scene? I feel like that's a very important scene.
Yeah, I'm gonna go off like the class theme once again, because it feels like in this movie, those two are like the ones that are in the most similar classes, but they were like the furthest away, and at least from part of Annie, she hated him. And finally, like, they're in a situation where it's just the both of them. Mm-hmm. And I felt like there was a mutual understanding of what happened in the past few days. And, like, we find out that it was, like, Igor's birthday yesterday when, like, he was trying to calm down Annie and chase after Vanya. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I feel like in that part, Annie grew somewhat of, like, a sympathy for Igor.
I disagree. No, she didn't grow any sympathy for him.
I think obviously she was never gonna like him, but I just feel like because he saw everything that happened, I feel like she somewhat, like a tiny bit, there was like a friendship
like
there.
An understanding.
Yeah, like an understanding there, and like there was also a bit of like cultural nuances and differences. Both as being like a Russian man who grew up in a very patriarchal, toxically patriarchal society. Yeah. And then Annie growing up in a place where she was constantly sexually exploited. Mm-hmm. And those two backgrounds, like trying to have a conversation with each other, I feel like that was that. Yeah.
I think, number one, Annie really didn't like Igor, and I'm going to stand on this. At the end of the film, she really didn't like Igor either, right? And that's going to be for the last scene. I'll give my take on that. But I feel like when Annie and Igor are talking, that part is very important because it's like the clash of two different understandings of like gender and relationships between men and women and stuff like that. Like in the Russian world, it's a bit more traditional, right? Like you remember when we went to that party at your friend's house and there was like this Russian girl there and she was like trying to understand transgender, but she's like, we don't understand this. I don't know. In Russia, she's boy girl. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like stuff like that, right? And so, Annie is very Americanized, very westernized, and we also are living in the age of post-Me Too, where like women's bodies and asking for consent are considered like sacrosanct. It's sacred stuff. You know what I mean? And so, in Igor's mind, grabbing a woman like that to restrain her from hurting you or hurting yourself is natural, right? Even if you're a bit rough. But in Annie's mind, that's violent assault, right? And stuff like that. And also, just to go back to that scene, Annie sort of weaponized her womanhood by screaming rape when she wasn't actually being raped too. Which is, once again, in that situation, it's like understandable because like you're being kidnapped and stuff like that. And there's a
possibility of rape.
And it's a possibility of rape, right? But it's still, it's still an interesting thing to say that at a time when you're not having that happen. And I feel like maybe this might be controversial. The director is trying to give a commentary with this film, with that scene when Annie yells rape, and also in that conversation with Igor, that the way we think about, protecting femininity and gender relations between men and women has become too extreme. You know what I mean? Towards one side. That's what I think Sean Baker, that's his name, the director, is trying to get at. I feel like subtly, very subtly with those things. What do you think?
Like, is he trying to say there's too much feminism?
Too much sensitivity and too much weaponization of women's womanhood as a way to prevent men from actually, like, being men. You know what I mean? I feel like this movie is red pill, light at certain points. Of course, Vanya is a toxic man, right? He took advantage of this girl, or he wasn't serious with this girl and kind of like ruined her life to some degree, or gave her a very bad experience. Maybe not even ruined her life, right? But Annie, in certain cases, misunderstands men. I think, that's a better way of thinking about this film. Annie misunderstands men, she misunderstood Vanya as an actual guy she could marry. She misunderstood Igor as a guy who was just trying to do his job and he wasn't trying to rape her or assault her. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to mansplain to you. I'm just giving my take. But what do you think?
I think her misunderstanding men is very possible because I hardly understand men now.
Right.
Even though I'm married and I like live with a man every day. And she is a girl who might possibly have a twisted understanding of men and relationships because she's a sex worker, and intimacy is like something you share with a loved one usually in the society. And to not do that and do the otherwise constantly might have fucked her like perceptions up. So that's understandable. About like the tiny bit of a red pillness of this movie, I can't talk. I mean, if that's the case, I don't agree with that. Like, obviously, if you're a woman who's not being raped and you yell rape, that's not cool. But at the same time, we have to go to certain lengths to protect ourselves in the society, and that cannot be blamed on us, really. Mm-hmm. And it could be more blamed, like, to the society. But, yeah. You want to talk about the last scene?
Yeah, let's talk about the last scene. So, essentially, Igor is dropping off Annie at the house in the snow where she lives with all of her stuff. And he hands Annie back the wedding ring, right? That, they took from her originally and says, don't tell Vanya, right? And so he gets back in the car after he puts her stuff on the porch. And, Annie says, like, this car is like so you, because he's driving like this beat up car where you can hear the engine and stuff like that. And he says, like, do you like this car? And she says, no, I don't. Right? But then, she tries to, like, get on top of Igor and, like, they, kiss. And
they don't kiss.
They don't kiss. Okay, sorry. They don't kiss. They have sex, right? She, like, puts the penis in, right? And she's, like, riding him and stuff like that. And he, like, reaches for her face, I guess.
Tries to kiss her.
Yeah, tries to kiss her for intimacy, and like she resists, and then she ends up having this big emotional explosion where she's like punching his chest and like hitting him and hating him and stuff like that, and she like ends up just crying in his arms in the car in the snow. What did you think about the ending?
Oof. I think like the ending is most deep part of this movie, and it's packed with like just themes that this movie tried to explore throughout. I think once again there was like class in this part because we see Igor really understood Annie's suffering throughout the events that happened, and he kept the ring and decided to like give it to her because he could have kept it for himself
and sold it
and nothing would have changed for him. And Annie therefore like feels understood and grateful to an extent that, somebody saw that I was right. Because everyone else around the family acted like she was crazy. That she was just stupid that she got into this from the beginning. Mm-hmm. So I feel like she wanted to give something to Igor, and then like the thing that she could have given as a woman was like her body. Mm-hmm. And yeah, even though like they were the same class to an extent, because she's a woman, she's like required to give more of herself.
Yeah. There's that. There's also just the basic, simple, universal truth. It's written in the Bible, chapter future, verse 13, featuring Drake. These hoes love street niggas. And every stripper has a dope boyfriend. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, why is that?
Right, because it's a similar class. It's the underworld sort of situation, right? So Annie's a stripper, and now she's back in her place in some degree, right? Kevin Samuels was right. Everybody gets what they qualify for. And in this case, Annie qualifies for an Igor more than she does a Vanya, right? And that's sort of like what she hates. That's why she said, I don't like this car. And that's why she ends up punching his chest. I don't like you, but this is all I get.
Yeah. And I also think it was a way for Annie to get Vanya out of her system.
Because she never did that with him.
No.
No, she like I said, she never went off on him. Like she just yelled at him and cursed at him, but she never like.
But at the same time, like when you break up with someone, like they say, oh, you have to sleep with someone else to get over that person. Mm-hmm. I feel like it was something like that. You know, she had to fuck someone else in order to get him out of her system, and also somewhat of a revenge, maybe, even though like Vanya doesn't know what will happen. Mm-hmm. You know, somewhat of like just get back in her own world. Mm-hmm. That, you know, she slept with the help. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Basically, if they were married. So yeah, but then I think like she realized what she was doing, and she realized that this sort of, you know, thing that she was doing, it's not gonna have any bad effect on Vanya or anything. And then she started to cry.
I think it was more than just, you know, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think it's more than just trying to get back at Vanya. I think this is a bit of like, you know, femi-pessimism to say this, like, in the sense like she realized, like, in this life, in this world that we live in this man world that we live in, right, I only really have one thing that will make sure I have some security in life, and that is how much can I attract to and appeal to a man. And in this case, what man am I going to cling to now that's going to save me in this sense, right? And what do I know that can save me? My sexuality. Because like you said earlier, she's like a sex worker and that's all she knows, right? One of like the saddest things you can ever see is like an old porn star that was popping in like the late 90s or early 2000s come back and make movies in the 2010s and 2020s. It's sad as hell, but it's a common phenomenon. Mia Khalifa got an OnlyFans after she said, I hate porn, I never wanted to do porn and all that stuff. But what does she still know how to do? What's the only thing like she really knows how to do is like get naked on the internet. You know what I mean? And that's not a knock against Mia Khalifa, but it's sort of like a sad sort of loop that we're in, you know, in this case where in this male-dominated world, women still have to like try to get a man to be stable and ahead to some degree. You know what I mean? Because she don't want to go back. She don't want to go back to living with her sister and stripping at the club.
Yeah, but at the same time, her experience kind of proved that wrong, because she tried to use her beauty and her charm and her sex to get a man, but obviously that didn't turn out well.
Right. And go ahead.
And maybe she cried because she was trying to do that again, like you said, with Igor, but she realized, like, that's not the way that she should be going. Mm-hmm. Instead, she should be, you know, getting something more worth her, you know, time and effort.
Right. But what does that say about, you know, any, you know, wanting love, right? Because, like, you're saying, like, oh, you know, she, in this case, like, that's not going to work, right? And I know you might also be thinking, well, Annie could just, you know, try to find another dude or just go back and work on herself and stuff like that, right? But in this world we live in, like, is it possible for Annie just to find, like, pure love where she's equal to her man and she doesn't need him, she wants him and stuff like that? Like, is that possible in this world? You know what I mean?
As a sex worker?
To some degree, yeah, because that, you know, our careers define us to some degree, right? In the capitalist system, I am a teacher rather than a teacher is something I do. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So,
I mean, in this society, Annie's case as a sex worker, I would say that's really, really hard, because most men don't give women that respect, let alone sex workers that respect.
Right.
So it's really hard. It would be really hard for her to find a man that would just see her as his equal.
So with that being said, is this film sort of like conservative in a way? Because it's giving the story of girls, ladies, I know it looks cute being a stripper, being an OnlyFans girl, but do you want to be Anora? She got used, abused, and left on the side of the road. You get what I'm saying? Do you really want to be that? You know what I mean?
I mean, we do that without any money back. Like, we give guys validation, our body, our time, our love, and then we get left. Mm. So, like, it's not, you know, we do that without getting
But I'm talking
10K.
about what, like, the media is saying. Like, because, you know, is this film anti-sex work? Is the film basically conservative propaganda? Is this no different than a Christian film, let's say, about a girl who says, I want to be the biggest booty shaking model on IG, and then she ends up, becoming like, broke and disgusted and strung out on drugs. That didn't happen to Anora, but she still had a bad ending for her life.
I don't think this movie has a strong stance for stripping or anti-sex work. Mm-hmm. I don't think it has a strong stance. But if you really want to dig deep, then I would say it's more anti than it's for pro.
Mm-hmm. So, I think it might be a bit neutral. Yeah. But if you sit back and think about it, it doesn't make it seem like it's a positive thing to be a stripper or a sex worker. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But still, I think there's some people also who might say, oh, this film having Igor be like the one good dude is sort of like white knighting this thing, sort of like how we have white saviors in black films. Like we watched Rosewood the other day and there's like at least one good white guy. And so that's supposed to make up for like the 20, 30, 100 white guys who are like burning villages. You know what I mean? But you know what I mean? What do you think about that? Like Igor being like the one good man to make up for the evil that men do.
I don't think he was the white knight in this movie because we feel like at the end Ani still doesn't like him that much. Even though like she might have had sex with him, I don't think they're going to see each other again after what happened. And I feel like he's just used as a catharsis. And on top of it, I see this movie more like a clash, or not clash, but understanding in classes rather than like clash of sexes. Mm-hmm. So for me, I don't think that's like relatable.
Yeah. To me, now that I've spoken about this film more at length, this film really just feels like one big, long Kevin Samuels live stream screed. Like he is just yelling at the camera. Like, girl, you're going to go out there and sell your body and get picked up by a Russian billionaire and left on the side of a tarmac. It sounds like one long, like, red pill rant, low key to me. Is it a good film in the sense it's entertaining, it's fun? It's okay. It's okay. It's a little bit above par. Is it the best film this year? Hell no. Under any other circumstances, I feel like Akdi and I might watch this and just be like, that was cool.
Yeah.
That was cool. And we might have a better review for it in the sense like we'll have more good things to say about it. But the fact like this is beating out so many other films when, the story in itself is so simple and also so underexplored. Like we don't know how Annie ended up stripping. We don't know, how she really, learned Russian or her background and her family. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, stuff like that,
It's not the movie that will blow your mind or will make you think about it for the last 5 days.
Yeah.
And I feel like those are the type of movies that should get awards.
Mm-hmm.
That explore I feel like there isn't enough character development in this movie to get to that deeper level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are themes that are important and overall watching is easy.
Mm.
There isn't anything that is too confusing, too philosophical, too crazy. And it's just an okay movie. It's above average, I would say. It's not it's above average, but it's not you have to see this.
Right. Final thoughts one more time. My final thoughts about this film. Akdi says she sees it in class. I see the last 15 minutes or so as really about gender and how we view gender differently than maybe other parts of the world. And by bringing the Russian culture into this film in this American context, it brings that clash there. And like when Annie says to Igor, "You have rape eyes," it sounds so silly coming out of her mouth. Like this one girl who didn't understand that, this one girl that didn't understand that Vanya is a man-child who doesn't understand life and who's living off daddy's money. This one girl, who didn't understand, maybe the billionaire Russian family might, not be happy their son married a stripper. This little girl who, didn't understand, Vanya didn't love her when he ran out of the room, now says, oh, I know you're a rapist by looking at your eyes. You know what I mean? This is what, Instagram Shorts does to your brain. You know what I mean? This is what happens when you get, your feminism from, Twitch streamers rather than, actually having some self-actualization and getting some education. But that's really all I gotta say.
What is your score?
Final score for me would be like a solid 6. Talking about it more brought it down. Last night it was a 7. It's a 6. Good acting overall, but it's just a 6. And for you?
Yeah, it's a 6 for me as well.
Yeah.
I think that was also my score last night.
Yeah. But I think we'll wrap it up here. Anything else? All right. So this has been episode 100. 100. Give me a high five. Give me a high five. That's it. So episode 100 of Simon and Akdi movie reviews. We do have the film Rosewood that we want to review, but that's a really, really good film. And because this is episode 100, this will be included in the contention for like the Simon and Akdi Oscars that we're going to be doing possibly next month. Be on the lookout for that. But yeah, this film probably won't be getting any Oscars when we do our nominations and stuff. So that saves Rosewood for our next round of Oscars when we reach like 200 films, if we ever do get there. But thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And if you have any films you want us to review, put it in the comments section. If you have any comments or questions for us, put it in the comment section. You know how it goes. And be on the lookout for more reviews. Go subscribe to Backpack Bandits for more travel content, and be easy out there. Peace.